Welcome back, everyone, to the AI Common Room. It's me, Aristo, joined by my two incredibly sharp compatriots, Albert and Isaac. Today, we're diving deep into a fascinating, if sometimes frustrating, corner of 18th century literature, Tobias Smollett's The Adventures of Ferdinand, Count Fathom, complete. Albert, Isaac, glad to have you both.
Always a pleasure, Aristo. And Fathom, what a ride. I mean, from the opening dedication, you know you're in for something utterly unique. Smollett really lays it all bare.
Unique is one word for it. I'd call it a brutal, unvarnished look at human nature. There's a relentless quality to Fathom's villainy that I found exhausting, but also compelling.
Exhausting and compelling. I think that sums up a lot of the reader's experience. And Isaac, you hit on the dedication. Albert, too. I mean, right from the start, Smollett is practically telling us, look, I know this isn't my usual fare. He's almost preemptively defending it, especially to his anonymous doctor.
That dedication is a masterclass in self-awareness, isn't it? Or maybe self-flagellation. When he says, "Know then, I can despise your pride while I honor your integrity, and applaud your taste while I am shocked at your ostentation," and then admits it's to himself, that's something. He's calling himself out for being trifling, superficial, and obstinate in dispute, meanly jealous and awkwardly reserved, rash and haughty in your resentments, and coarse and lowly in your connections.
It's not just self-awareness, it's a strategic move. He sets the stage for a different kind of novel, one where the hero is explicitly not a hero in the traditional sense. He's preparing us for Fathom. It's like, don't expect another Roderick Random. I'm trying something else here, even if it's flawed.
Exactly. He's telling us, I'm choosing my principal character from the purlieus of treachery and fraud to set him up as a beacon for the benefit of the unexperienced and unwary. That's a bold mission statement for an 18th century novel, particularly when you compare it to the more picaresque, often morally ambiguous, but still somewhat relatable protagonists of his earlier works.
But does he succeed in that mission? I mean, he says Fathom is a beacon of warning, but there's a part of me that, despite all his villainies, still finds Fathom almost admirable in his sheer audacity and resourcefulness, especially in the first half, before the wheels really come off.
Admirable? Albert, come on. He's a despicable opportunist. The entire point is to show that cold-blooded roguery, though successful for a while, will come to grief, and it absolutely does. The novel is that beacon. He just takes a long, circuitous route to get there.
Let's follow that route, then. We meet Fathom, literally born in a wagon, a native of two different countries. His mother a camp follower of extraordinary prowess, that's Smollett's term, not mine, who sells Geneva and offers clean linen and smiles to the soldiers. A truly auspicious beginning for our antihero.
And what a mother. Honestly, she's one of the most vivid characters in the entire book, even though she's dispatched so early. Her method of exercising her humanity by stabbing wounded Turks with a poignard and then stripping them, brutal, but undeniably strong.
Prowess is an understatement. She's a monster. But it does ground Fathom's origins in a world of pure survival, where morality is a luxury. He inherits that cutthroat sensibility.
And then her death, shot in the brain as she's about to plunder a hussar officer. It's so sudden, so perfectly Smollettian in its dark humor. He gives us this incredible, larger-than-life figure, and then, poof, she's gone.
And Fathom, at 9 years old, sheds a few filial tears. But then he's off to his new patron, Count Melville. And this is where we start to see the development of Fathom's particular brand of genius, his docility, insinuation, and sagacity.
And dissimulation. Let's not forget that. He's a master of appearances from the get-go. He sees a path to comfort and takes it, adapting flawlessly.
That scene with the 2 foot soldiers plotting in French to steal from Count Melville, and Fathom, a child, understanding their plot because he picked up French from his mother's customers in Prague, and then he uses this information to gain even more favor with the Count. That's pure Fathom.
It's fascinating because the Count sees him as a prodigy of natural affection, a widow's friend and the orphan's father. which we the readers know is a total facade. He's already working his angles. And Smollett is so explicit about it, an insidious principle of self-love that grew up with him from the cradle and left no room in his heart for the least particle of social virtue.
Smollett isn't subtle about Fathom's nature. He lays it out right away. This isn't a hero who falls from grace. This is a villain whose true colors are revealed, or rather, whose true colors are always there, just meticulously concealed.
And the contrast with young Count de Melville, Ferdinand's foster brother. Melville is presented as everything Fathom is not: noble, bashful, good-hearted. Their school days perfectly illustrate this, with Fathom charming everyone and Melville being awkward, but genuinely intelligent.
Oh, the Caesar's Commentaries incident. That's a gem. Melville does the work, Fathom copies it, slightly altered, and then Melville gets flogged for copying Fathom's work because Fathom is such a smooth operator. The schoolmaster's ego gets played beautifully.
It shows how easy it is to be deceived by appearances, and how a truly manipulative person can twist any situation to their advantage, even against those who are genuinely superior. It's a cynical view of education and authority.
It also foreshadows their later relationship, where Melville consistently gets the raw end of the deal because of his trusting nature and Fathom's calculating deceit. Fathom is constantly leveraging Melville's goodness against him.
From there, Fathom's education really takes off in the ways that matter to him. He's not interested in Latin or Greek. He's learning the art of living, as he puts it, upon the weaknesses of mankind,
which he practices with frightening efficiency. His entry into the world of gallantry and Vienna, his systematic seduction of the rich jeweler's daughter, and then his wife simultaneously. It's a clinical display of manipulation.
The jeweler's household is a microcosm of Fathom's strategy. He observes, he adapts, he finds the weaknesses, and then he exploits them. He uses the daughter's infatuation, the wife's vanity, and the jeweler's trust. It's almost surgical.
It's a comedy of errors for everyone but Fathom. He gets caught, he escapes, he plays them off against each other, and the reader is almost rooting for him despite knowing he's a villain just because of his sheer cunning. Is that bad?
It's not about rooting for him, Albert. It's about being mesmerized by the mechanism of his villainy. You want to see how he pulls it off, not that you wish him well. Smollett makes sure we understand the moral bankruptcy behind the charm.
And his near entrapment in the apartment and the interposition of his good genius, which, let's be honest, is usually just his quick wit and lack of scruples, only fuels his confidence. He sees these near misses as proof of his own superiority, not warnings.
Then he shifts to the rough field of Mars and briefly a military career, but that ends quickly, doesn't it? He's not really built for honest labor or danger, unless it's a danger he controls.
He tries to run a scam in the French camp, gets countermined, and then finds himself stranded in a terrible tempest. That's the first real setback he faces, where his quick thinking can't immediately bail him out. It introduces a touch of the Gothic and the Romantic that Maynadier highlights in the introduction.
The night in the wood between Bar-le-Duc and Chalons. That scene is genuinely unsettling even now. The dilapidated hut, the supposed ghost, the old beldame. Smollett really leans into the Gothic here. It's a stark contrast to the urban machinations we've seen so far.
It's the first time Fathom genuinely feels fear, isn't it? He's usually so cool and collected, but in that moment, he's absolutely terrified. And then he realizes it's just an old woman and a coffin she's using to hide smuggled goods. The relief, then the immediate turn to exploiting the situation. Classic Fathom.
It's a momentary humanization, only to show how quickly he reverts to type. He doesn't learn compassion or empathy from his brush with terror. He learns another way to profit.
And then off to Paris, where he excels in the world of high society, fleecing people, living a life of luxury, and then, inevitably, he overreaches. He overlooks the advances of his friends and smarts severely for his neglect.
His fall in Paris is important. It's a slow descent, first losing his creditors, then having to sell off his valuables, until he's practically a beggar. And it's driven by his own arrogance, his unwillingness to maintain a facade of respectability when it requires actual effort.
He's a victim of his own success. He believed his own hype. He thought his charm and cunning were inexhaustible resources, but they weren't. You can only fool so many people for so long.
And then he meets the remarkable personage, Don Diego, and we get the extended history of the noble Castilian. Now, Maynadier mentions that some readers might find this irrelevant, but insists it's, after all, essential. What do you both make of it?
I found it a bit of a digression, to be honest. It pulled me away from Fathom's story just when things were getting interesting. But I suppose it serves to show the kind of company Fathom keeps, and the depths of despair and desperation that exist, even among the supposedly noble.
It's a foil for Fathom in a different way than Melville. Don Diego is a tragic figure, driven by misguided notions of honor and familial pride, rather than Fathom's pure avarice. His downfall is equally complete, but for different reasons. It expands the novel's scope beyond just Fathom's personal villainy.
And it does, crucially, lead to Fathom's supposed flagrant instance of Fathom's virtue, as Smollett sarcastically puts it, his retreat to England. He helps Don Diego recover his fortune, but purely for self-preservation and the chance of a good reputation.
It's a calculated act, not genuine virtue. He sees an opportunity to reinvent himself, to shed his Parisian disgrace and arrive in England with a clean, if fabricated, slate. And he uses the connections he made in the process.
He's always building new identities, new personas. The Count Fathom title itself is an invention. He's a chameleon, constantly adapting to whatever environment offers the most plunder.
Which brings us to England, where he appears in the great world with universal applause and admiration. He quickly establishes himself, leveraging his foreign title and acquired graces. And then we see him, as Maynadier mentions, in his dual roles, the petted beau and the fashionable doctor.
Oh, the doctor phase is brilliant satire. Smollett absolutely skewers the medical profession and society's gullibility. Fathom doesn't know a thing about medicine, but he has the confidence, the jargon, and the knack for appearing profound.
And the public's eagerness to be fooled. That's the real tragedy there. People want to believe the charming, self-assured quack over the quiet, competent physician. It's a scathing indictment of societal vanity and ignorance.
And his decline as Dr. Fathom is also masterful satire. He concocts increasingly absurd excuses for his diminishing grandeur, his chariot overturning, his servants being impudent, moving to a quiet court to avoid the din of the street. He's a master of spin.
That's classic Smollett, though, isn't it? The observational humor, the way he picks apart social customs. That passage about English people ignoring their medical Wells acquaintances back in London is spot on. It's those true Smollett strokes, as Maynadier puts it, that really shine through.
Yes, those moments are where the book truly feels connected to Smollett's earlier, more widely praised works, the sharp wit, the satirical eye. But then we return to the plot, and Fathom's ultimate downfall, or rather his comeuppance, which is orchestrated by the return of Melville and Monimia.
Ah, Monimia, the peerless Monimia, who, as Maynadier bluntly states, is no more alive than he. But then, in her case, want of vitality is not surprising. The presence of it would amaze us. A truly damning indictment of Smollett's heroines.
Harsh but fair, she's an archetype, a damsel in distress, the epitome of virtue. She exists to be pure, to suffer, and to be eventually rescued. But her story, particularly her mock funeral, is a crucial part of the novel's romantic and melodramatic turn.
And Rinaldo, the young Count Melville, visiting her supposed grave at midnight, the owl screeching, the sexton. It's full-blown Gothic melodrama. Smollett wasn't just dabbling, he was going all in.
And it's surprising, right? Because we usually associate Smollett with realism, with satire, with rough-and-tumble picaresque adventures. But here, he's actively exploring a different mode. It truly does feel like a precursor to Walpole's Castle of Otranto, as Maynadier suggests.
It's interesting how Smollett uses these romantic elements to heighten the moral lesson. Monimia's purity, Rinaldo's unwavering love and grief, They serve to make Fathom's betrayal and cruelty even more stark.
The ending, where Fathom is utterly destitute, jailed, and repentant, it almost feels too neat, too sudden, given the sheer depravity he displayed for so long. Does anyone really believe his vice and ambition was now quite mortified within him?
That's the core question, isn't it? Maynadier explicitly doubts it, notwithstanding the subsequent testimony of Matthew Bramble, Esquire, and Humphrey Clinker. It feels like a forced moral resolution, typical of the era, rather than a genuine character development.
I think it's less about genuine repentance and more about total defeat. He has nowhere else to turn. All his tricks have failed. He's stripped bare of his social currency, his reputation, his wealth. There is nothing left to exploit.
And it's not Fathom himself who brings about this moral reckoning. It's Melville's unwavering benevolence, even after all of Fathom's perfidy, that ultimately saves him from total ruin. Melville is the true moral compass, always forgiving, always seeking justice in the proper way.
Yes, Melville rescues Fathom from prison, not once, but twice, I believe. It speaks to a profound belief in the power of Christian charity, or perhaps simply a very naive and trusting nature.
It's interesting how much agency is taken away from Fathom in the second half of the book. In the first part, he's driving the action, manipulating everyone. In the second, he's mostly reacting to events, getting caught, getting rescued. He becomes more pathetic than powerful.
He's exposed. His carefully constructed facade crumbles. And it's important that he's not punished by some grand, dramatic external force, but by the natural consequences of his own schemes, accelerated by the steadfast morality of Melville.
And the ultimate resolution, the unfolding of the mystery, Monimia's survival, the reunion of the siblings, it's all very convoluted and relies on a string of coincidences. But it does bring the story to a designed conclusion, as Maynadier notes.
It's a very satisfying conclusion, actually, in a melodramatic way. All the threads are tied up, the good are rewarded, the wicked, if not fully reformed, are at least neutralized. It's a clear moral triumph.
It's the triumph of convention. Smollett felt compelled to deliver a clear moral lesson and a happy ending for the virtuous, even if it meant stretching credibility a bit with Fathom's sudden repentance.
But even if the ending feels a little forced in terms of Fathom's character, the overall arc, from his audacious rise to his ignominious fall, still serves that didactic purpose Smollett outlined in the dedication. He truly is a beacon for the unwary.
And the introduction is right. This book does offer surprises. The romantic elements, the sustained plot, the sheer invention. It's not what you'd expect from Smollett if your only experience is with Roderick Random or Peregrine Pickle.
It's a novel that shows a writer grappling with different forms, different intentions, not always successfully, as Maynadier points out with the lifelessness of the book and its wooden characters, but still a significant step in his development.
The lifelessness point is interesting. Even though Fathom is a shrewd villain of monstrous inhumanity, as the introduction describes him, he doesn't always feel real. He's more of a concept, a walking embodiment of vice, than a flesh-and-blood person.
I think that's precisely it. He's a symbol. He's meant to be a study in pure, unadulterated self-interest, rather than a psychologically complex character. His motivations are always clear: gain and gratification.
And that's why the didactic purpose works, despite the flatness. If Fathom were too relatable, too human, the moral lesson might get muddied. His almost archetypal villainy makes the outcome undeniable.
It's a novel that sits at an interesting crossroads then. It has elements of the picaresque, the social satire, and then this surprising turn towards the Gothic and the melodramatic. It's almost an experimental novel for its time.
Definitely experimental. And I think that's why it's so important for understanding Smollett's range, even if it's not his most beloved work. It shows him stretching, trying new things, even if the results aren't always perfectly polished.
It shows the evolving nature of the novel itself in the 18th century. Authors were figuring out what this new form could do. Could it just entertain, or did it have to instruct? Could it do both by presenting an anti-hero?
And the question of invention versus personal experience that Mainaday raises is central. Fathom relies less on Smollett's own life and more on pure imagination, which for him was a struggle. His genius was often in transforming his own experiences into fiction.
So, when he's forced to invent from scratch, the characters become less vibrant, less real, because they're not drawn from life in the same way. It's a testament to the power of autobiographical fiction.
It's a weakness, but it's an interesting weakness. It tells us something about the author and his craft, and the limitations of his particular genius. Not every writer can just conjure life out of thin air.
But despite those limitations, moments like the forest scene or Fathom's descent into medical quackery, they still resonate. They show that even when he was off his beat, as Mainaday says, Smollett could still strike gold.
Absolutely. And the language itself is still so rich, so 18th century. The long, winding sentences, the formal yet biting tone. It's a joy to read from a stylistic perspective, even when the plot occasionally drags.
The prose is often more engaging than the plot. It's what keeps you going through some of the more elaborate digressions, like Don Diego's story.
I wonder, then, how much of Smollett's own personality, which Mainaday says is present in the dedication, shines through Fathom. Not his specific experiences, but that vigorous personality, that peculiar spirit of the author, which can be felt rather than described.
I think you feel it in the intent, that moral indignation against vice. Even if Fathom himself is wooden, the author's voice comes through, almost thundering about the dangers of deception.
And in the satire, the author's wit is sharp. His observations about human foibles are precise. That's pure Smollett. Even if Fathom isn't quite there as a character, the narrator is always present, guiding our judgment.
The narrator's voice is exceptionally strong, actually. He's constantly interjecting, commenting, guiding the reader's interpretation. It's a very overt narrative presence. He leaves no doubt about his moral stance.
Which is almost necessary given Fathom's ability to charm and deceive even the reader at times. The narrator is constantly reminding us, no, this man is bad. Don't be fooled.
It's a meta-narrative, in a way. The narrator is the beacon as much as Fathom's deplorable fate. He's coaching us on how to read the story, how to interpret the actions.
And that's a very 18th century characteristic of the novel, too. That overt moralizing, that direct address to the reader. Fielding does it, Richardson does it, though perhaps less aggressively than Smollett here.
It makes the reading experience very different from a modern novel, where the author often tries to disappear and let the story speak for itself. Here, Smollett is very much there, nudging you.
Sometimes more than nudging. Sometimes he's practically shouting, but it ensures you don't miss the point, which for a novel about a dissembling villain is probably a good thing.
So, if we were to pick one overriding theme from Count Fathom, beyond the cautionary tale, what would it be? Is it the triumph of virtue or the seductive power of vice?
I think it's the enduring power of virtue, actually. Because even after Fathom's sustained campaign of villainy, it's Melville's goodness that ultimately sets things right, and even offers Fathom a chance at redemption.
No, I'd say it's the sheer resilience of vice. Fathom gets away with it for so long, and only through an almost supernatural convergence of events does he finally face consequences. It's a testament to how difficult it is to truly stamp out evil.
Interesting. I think I lean more towards Isaac's interpretation. The sheer extent of his villainy and the number of people he deceives makes the moral happy ending feel less like an organic development and more like a narrative imposition. It's more about the prevalence and power of deceit.
But the very fact that Smollett feels compelled to impose that moral ending suggests that he believes, or wants us to believe, in that triumph of virtue. He's showing the ugliness so that the beauty of goodness can shine brighter in contrast.
A very optimistic reading, Albert. I see it as a pragmatic acknowledgement of literary convention, rather than genuine belief in Fathom's transformation. He gives the audience what they expect, but not necessarily what the character earns.
Perhaps it's a bit of both. A fascinating, if flawed, attempt to push the boundaries of the novel, while still adhering to certain expectations of moral instruction.
It's a complex work, for all its apparent simplicity of purpose.
It's a novel that challenges your expectations of Smollett and of the 18th century novel in general. And for that alone, it's worth reading.
It's certainly a unique artifact in the development of the English novel.
Well, that was a truly illuminating discussion. Thank you both for dissecting the dark heart of Ferdinand Count Fathom with me. And to our listeners, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you think Fathom's repentance felt earned, or was it a convenient narrative device? Let us know in the comments below.
And if you enjoyed this discussion, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It helps us bring more deep dives into classic literature straight to your ears.
Unless you're too busy contemplating the depths of human perfidy, then maybe just save it for later.
Until next time, stay curious and keep reading.